Hey there, it's Gary Parrish. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, and leaky black. The Eye on College Basketball podcast is presented by Jersey Mike's. Jersey Mike's, a sub above. Matt Norlander is here with me. He's in studio for CBS Sports HQ in Stamford, Connecticut. I just finished a 3-hour bracket breakdown show on CBS Sports Network here in New York City. I'm now back at my hotel. If you're watching on YouTube, smash the like button like you're Brandon Davies. You have consent. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel. Please knock that out while you're here. Okay, let's get into it. The 68-team bracket for the 2023 NCAA Tournament. It was released Sunday night exclusively on CBS, which is America's most watched network. It's the network of stars. The top 4 seeds were Alabama, Kansas, Houston, Purdue. Basically, everybody expected those 4 as number 1 seeds in some order. The last 4 in: Mississippi State, Pitt, Arizona State, Nevada. First 4 out: Oklahoma State, Rutgers, North Carolina, Clemson. And guess who got 68 for 68? Matty Brackets. When did you become a bracketologist?
Matty Brackets. Well, I posted before. And by the way, I want to say this off the top. This is our most listened to episode every single year. For those of you, and there is a big number of you that have found this podcast. You either find it once a year, you found it for the first time. We are CBS Sports' official college basketball podcast. You will find no more informative and entertaining podcasts on college hoops than this one. Stick around. We have you covered wall to wall, literally day to day, maybe sometimes multiple times within a day, with college hoops previews on the podcast. And thank you for stopping by, whether on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you. This Sunday night episode is always a ride. Selection Sunday. Can't wait to get into it. Yeah, I did put out my 68 teams before. I saw you did as well, but you were on a TV set in New York. I was in the HQ studios here in Stamford. So I actually didn't get a chance to scroll through yours. I assume that you just merely put, I'm going to say you put Rutgers in and you had Nevada out. Did you go 67 out of 68? Because I'll tell you what, the past few years when Paris has done this, I appreciate the gesture, but normally you come on and you say, I'm a bracketologist. I went 68 for 68. So the fact that you didn't open with that leads me to indicate that you were either a 66 man or maybe a 67 man.
I'm a 67 man. I was 67 of 68. I had Rutgers in. I had Nevada out. I just thought, and I know that how you finish or the last 3 games isn't part of the criteria. I got it. But I just thought, like, Nevada lost 3 straight heading into Selection Sunday. Really questionable losses there. I thought that might be enough to push them out. And if they try to complain, you just say, hey, how about don't lose your final 3 games heading into Selection Sunday. Rutgers, as I said on the bracket breakdown show, has nobody to blame but itself. You know, like, if you are in a power conference and you don't make the NCAA tournament, it is your fault. Sometimes if you're in a mid-major or low major, you're really good enough to get there, but you can't build the at-large resume based on conference affiliation, based on who you're able to play in the non-league portion of your schedule. But if you're in a league like the Big Ten or the ACC, any of the power conferences, if you don't get there, it's up to you. And the thing that we talked about this before, this is where I missed it. And I'm going to keep this in mind next year when because we talk about 68 to 68, 67 to 60. Basically, you could know nothing about basketball, but just go through a coursework of how the bracket is put together, and you're going to get 66 of 68.
Right.
Like,
hitting the seed lines accurately is actually where the dirty work is done. When you get the teams on the right seed lines, that's when you've really done it.
Right. So, like, everybody's going to get 66. Most are going to get around 67. And then, frankly, I'm not calling you lucky, but at the end of it, just about every year, what you're doing is you've got 2 slots and you got 5 schools you're looking at for those 2 slots, and you pick 2 based on however you interpret it, and then the committee either matches you or they don't, and that's how you're a 67 man or a 68 man or woman, of course. And so the thing that I don't care about at all, but I know the committee does, non-league strength of schedule. And if you look at Rutgers' non-league strength of schedule, 314th in the country. Also, Rutgers went 3-7 down the stretch without Mawat Mag, and that seemed to play a role. Like, he's not available to you, and since he hasn't been available, you haven't been very good. And that seemed to play a role in Rutgers getting left out. But as I said on the show, I could make the case for Rutgers over Nevada if you want me to, but I don't feel passionately enough to try to do it. Like we were all going to agree about on 66 of these teams, and then we were all going to disagree over a set of 5 teams that we had 2 slots for. I would have had Rutgers in over Nevada, but again, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
And Rutgers, as you can watch, if you're watching us here, Oklahoma State ahead of Rutgers, which is a little bit surprising, but Oklahoma State had 15 losses there, and so that's the way the cookie crumbles. Pitt to the first 4, not surprised by it whatsoever. In fact, the first 4 I'm good with it. I would have flipped. I would have put Mississippi State into the field. I would have put Providence in that spot there. Also, Rutgers fan, and this is about all we're going to say about Rutgers. Not much more. I tell you what, Rutgers should have had the win at Ohio State, and the Big Ten admitted it got the call wrong. And if Rutgers has that win on its schedule, it's in the field. So if you got some bitterness, I hear you the whole way. Rutgers got in on the other side of it a year ago. Here they're on the wrong side. So that's just how it goes. We'll get into the 1 seeds in a second, but I do want to tee you up something. I'll say mine, then if you've got an idea, GP, just let me know. I did the overnight hit for HQ. When we opened the top of the show, it was, when you look at the bracket, what pops to mind? What's a big storyline for you? And I'll tell you what, let me look at this bracket. I'll tell you this, the West, and we'll get to these regions, and we are going to have, as we always do, Monday, East, West, South, Midwest, region by region previews. Those are also coming. We got you more than covered. But you know how it usually is in the West, right? You got a hodgepodge of teams because the West is never populated in normal years with teams that could fit on the 1, 2, 3, and 4 lines or the 5 lines. It's just because there's fewer teams out there. So usually the West is the weakest. Not this year, man. Are you kidding me right now? Did you pick up on this? 5 of the top 11 teams at Ken Palmer in the West. Did you realize that, GP?
I did not realize that, but I did recognize that it was strong because I actually think Kansas, which was projected by most to be the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament as recently as 2 days ago, I think Kansas is actually the most vulnerable of the number 1 seeds because in that region, you've got the 2 seed is UCLA, your outright Pac-12 champ. Now, they have lost a key player, but still, it's the Bruins in presumably if they get there, Las Vegas, they'll have I don't know if anybody ever has a crowd advantage over Kansas, but like UCLA is closer to Vegas than Kansas is. The 3 seed in that region is Gonzaga. So obviously they're good enough to get you.
Will travel. Well, let me just tell you.
And will travel.
They know how to get to Vegas. They do it every year for the WCC tournament. If Gonzaga's their second weekend, they will probably have the most fans in the building.
The 4 seed in the West is a UConn team that in certain points of the season has looked like the best team in the country, has really super strong computer numbers. And then the 6 seed is a TCU team that won by 20-plus points at Allen Fieldhouse earlier this season. So I just think there is a lot of different combinations of teams that can play Kansas competitively, if not beat the Jayhawks. It's spoiler alert. As much as I'm a believer in the program that Bill Self runs, Kansas is a 1 seed that I will not have in the Final Four.
Yeah, that's a steep climb there. You didn't even mention St. Mary's. So St. Mary's is 11th at UConn. Kansas is the 1 seed. It's 9. Gonzaga is the 3. It's 8 at KenPom. UConn is a 4 in this bracket. It's 4th at KenPom. And then UCLA is both a 2 in this bracket and 2 at KenPom. Again, 5 of the top 11 teams at KenPom are in one region. And then you get to a TCU team that's got Mike Miles and is certainly a danger. West is loaded. That was my biggest takeaway. Do you have a particular takeaway or something that you had mentioned on CBS Sports Network beyond what we're going to get into that springs to mind?
No, I mean, and I told this to next season's committee chair. Like when we start having these debates about Rutgers or Nevada, or about, who should be the number 1 overall seed, we're really splitting hairs and nitpicking. I think they largely do a good job. And by the way, it's always funny to me how you decide whether somebody does a good job. You realize how you do that, right? It's if they do what you think they should have done, then they did a good job. It's the same way with draft grades on the night of the NBA draft. Well, did they pick who you would have picked? Well, then that's an A. Did they pick somebody you would have never picked in this spot? Well, that's a D. And that's how draft grades are made. So the reason I think you can reasonably say not only this season, but most season that the selection committee, broadly speaking, did a good job is because the process to selecting teams and seeding teams is so transparent. They literally invite us to Indianapolis to sit through workshops to understand this is exactly what we're doing. This is how we do it. This is what matters. This is what doesn't. And once you understand the process of how they get to where they're trying to get to, well, then everybody's looking at the exact same data and we largely reach the same conclusions. So I've got some places where I think teams were underseeded or overseeded, and we'll get to that. But broadly speaking, the bracket looks about like what I thought it would look.
My last thing before we talk these one seeds, and it is on the top of the bracket. I loved, now that it's here and everyone's going to get focused in on these games. First of all, I just love holding this thing right here, man. Come on. Gosh, one of the best sounds in the world right there. Got to print out your bracket.
I can think of at least three sounds better than
Hey,
that.
listen, Sunday night, take it easy. Save it for the back end of the show. If you have the
I know
means
a
to
lot
print
of
out a
sounds
bracket,
better than that.
There's just crisp.
I personally made sounds better than that.
I loved how we had
that sound. I thought that sound was better.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The debate for the one seeds, and we're gonna get to that in just a second. We'll take a break. But the two seed and everything there. And I thought Gonzaga would be the first 3 seed. It wasn't. It was actually number 2 in the pecking order. I enjoyed how there was a lot up for discussion, a lot up for debate, and a lot of diversity on thought on who should be the number 1 overall seed. What actually how that wound up going, who was going to be on the 2 line, who was going to get shoved off. That was a lot of fun there. And the bracket is finally here. Hope everyone's having a great selection Sunday and enjoyed that selection show. You want to talk these one seeds, GP?
The number 1 seeds were Alabama, Kansas, Houston, and Purdue. We'll discuss that next, but first, a word from our partners.
Bracket season is here. Join the madness by playing the official bracket game of the NCAA. Get the CBS Sports app and be part of the madness.
So Alabama, Kansas, Houston, Purdue, 4 number 1 seeds. Any issues with that or with Alabama being the number 1 overall seed?
Nope, not at all. By the way, bracket preview, bracket games. We have a podcast, bracket games, bracket challenge at cbssports.com on your CBS Sports app. Make sure you do it, join, and I believe we're going to have prizes there. No issues whatsoever. In fact, I'm glad they went with Bama number 1 overall. From a resume perspective, it deserved it. Better than it was. Not only it beat Houston was number 2 in line. We'll get to that in a second. Bama was better than Kansas in 4 of the 6 team sheet metrics. It had a better record. It won its regular season and postseason titles, and the committee has used that in years past to validate number 1 overall seed status. So I tweeted earlier that Bama should get the number 1, but that the SEC tournament final usually doesn't matter. Now, I interviewed the chair, Chris Reynolds, on CBS Sports HQ, and I asked him. In fact, I think that's going to live on YouTube. If it is, we'll make sure we link that interview. It's about 6 minutes long. We'll link to that YouTube link so you can watch it. I tried to, get direct with him on a few things, on FAU, on Bama, and what they did there, and he did a pretty good job. But he did say, I got him to say, first he kind of half answered, and then I said, Chris, did Alabama winning the SEC tournament and Houston losing, did that dictate the fact that Alabama got the number 1 overall seed? And he basically said yes. So that was nice to hear that the Sunday results actually, as I believe they should have, because the margins were so narrow that it mattered. They had a contingency for it. Bama won, swept the SEC. It is projected as being one of the best teams in the country all season long. And I think from a resume perspective, that's entirely fair. Kansas did not get the win, and it had more losses. And at a certain point, I think there was the case for it. So because of that, the interesting fallout from all this is that Bama gets the South, though it goes to Louisville. Then it's Houston second in line. Houston goes to Kansas City if it reaches the regionals. Not Kansas. That means Kansas gets shipped out all the way to the West. And then you've got obviously Purdue going to the East, which was the expected course if that wound up happening. Texas did not break through. I thought there was a case. I would have put Texas on the 1 line and bumped Houston down. That's what I would have done. I don't have a huge issue with it overall. You want to put Texas on the 2, that's fine. Now you got a little Texas flavor. Houston the 1, Texas the 2 in the Midwest. But those are my overall feelings. And then from a pathway standpoint, I'd say Kansas has the toughest road. I'd probably, and I'm trying to take into account the entire region and all possible pathways, GP. I'd say Kansas is the toughest. I'm looking at this, and I think Purdue is probably 2. I'd probably go. I think I'd go Houston 3, I think by the narrowest of margins, taking into account the entire bracket. And then I think I'd go Bama 4 in terms of toughest pathways, all roads that could get them to Houston.
I've got it exactly the same way.
Okay,
I think Kansas is the toughest. Purdue has a likely second round. Either way, they have a second round matchup that's going to be challenging. It's either a Florida Atlantic team that is outright conference champions and conference tournament champions and underseeded. We'll get to that in a moment, I believe, or a Memphis team that just beat Houston. Yeah, shorthanded without Marcus Sasser Houston, but had previously, played Houston to the buzzer and then also played Houston to another single-digit game without Kendrick Davis available in that one. So Memphis, think about this if you're Purdue. Your second-round matchup is possibly a Memphis team that has played 4 games this season against number 1 seeds, 3 against Houston and 1 against Alabama on the road at Coleman Coliseum. And that was a 3-point game. So Memphis has played 4 games against number 1 seeds this season. Every one of them have been single-digit games, and they beat Houston earlier on Sunday. So that's a team with 2 great college players in Kendrick Davis and DeAndre Williams. I want to be clear. I'm picking Purdue to go to the Sweet 16 to get out of that game, no matter whether it's Memphis or Florida Atlantic. But I think it's going to be I think Purdue is going to have to play well to win that game. And even if Purdue does play well, I think it's probably tight with 5 minutes to go. I agree with the 4 number 1 seeds. Those are the 4 teams I would have had. I would have had Alabama as the number 1 overall. Same deal. I had already this afternoon, even before the bracket came out, started updating for the final time this season the top 25 and 1. Woo, boy.
No one feels better than you right now.
You ever do? You have to wait. You have to do that every day. It's like there's things you have to do every day. Brush your teeth, shave, rank 26 basketball teams every day.
I don't shave every day. No.
Well, yeah, I've just about reached the point where I have to be on screen somewhere every day. So I'm changing. Right. Yeah. Shave every day, brush teeth every day, rank 26 basketball teams every day. I'll be done with it tomorrow morning. Hallelujah. I had Alabama. I moved Alabama to number 1 in the top 25 and 1 even before the bracket came out. So just from a resume perspective, I'll bounce you through it real quickly. Alabama is 13-5 in quadrant 1, 6-0 in quadrant 2. So 19-5 in the first 2 quadrants. All 5 losses are in quadrant 1. Alabama has a winning percentage of 79.2 in the first 2 quadrants. Now Kansas, because this is very close, 17-7 in quadrant 1, 4-0 in quadrant 2, so 21-7 in the first 2 quadrants, with all 7 losses coming in quadrant 1. Kansas has a winning percentage of 75.0 in the first 2 quadrants. Alabama is the outright league champ and conference tournament champ. Alabama is better in every computer, and ultimately that's why I do believe that Alabama should have been the number 1 overall seed. And obviously this is going to be a big story until Alabama is done, either done because they lost or done because they won the national championship, because one of their players was charged with capital murder earlier this season, subsequently dismissed. And obviously I think everybody knows at this point, Brendan Miller, the star player, is the person who drove the gun to the scene where it was used to kill a 23-year-old mother. Like, that's not going away. I don't care how many times Nate Oates talks about the great culture and his great kids. Like, that story is not going away. And for Alabama to get the number 1 overall seed under these circumstances, it's just, in fact, I am saying they deserve it. But by getting it, it creates an awkward situation for everybody moving forward. I guess this is a different, it's something we kind of already discussed, like which number 1 seed is least likely to make the Final Four based on their region. And do you and I both agree that is Kansas in the West because of the other teams in that region?
Yeah, I think Nada, what's our poll in the YouTube chat right now? What question do we have up there? Because I know I lobbed that out to you. Is that up right now?
That's up there right now.
Who is leading that poll right now among what percentage?
Let me, can I get back to you in like 2 seconds?
Get back to me. I think that right now Kansas has to be the longest shot. Yeah, I think that is fair. But if you're listening to the podcast and you disagree, come find us. Let us know. If you're watching right now, appreciate all the comments in the chat there. I think that's fair. And on balance with this bracket, I think it is relatively balanced. Like, I don't have really too many issues with most of the seeding. We'll get to the few obvious ones there, but I think it's got to be Kansas. I mean, Kansas. All right, let me just break this down real quick. All right, so Kansas shouldn't have an issue with Howard. Congrats to Howard, ending a long tournament drought. We'd love to see Kenny Blakeney. He's done a great job there. Then Kansas could get a lottery pick in the second round. And Arkansas was a team that was preseason top 10, top 15 level. Now it hasn't lived up to that, but it's got two lottery. I said a lottery pick. It's got two. I mean, Anthony Black and Nick Smith Jr. are both going to be elite picks this year. So Kansas could have that waiting for if Illinois doesn't win that game. Then you get potentially UConn, although Dan Hurley's 0-2 in the tournament since he got to UConn. And as I said on HQ, I know exactly what Dan Hurley said when he saw Iona flash across the screen, and I cannot repeat it on HQ because he's got to face Rick Pitino, and the UConn fan base is starving for him to win a game. I'm going to say UConn will win that one. But so Kansas could face UConn. Again, fourth at Ken Pom UConn. And even if you think that's overrated, UConn objectively has been a top 10 to 12 team in the metrics all season long. Or St. Mary's, another one like that. So that's on the top half. If you get through all of that, on the bottom half, you're either going to have, waiting for you, most likely, you're going to have UCLA, which doesn't have Jalen Clark. Adeem Bonus supposed to come back. They could be waiting. Gonzaga, the number one offense in the country, and has played per Bart Torvik. By the way, I dropped 2 Bart Torvik references on HQ tonight. How you like your boy right now? 2 of them. I said you can sort the data.
I've been doing it all season.
Have you dropped on CBS Network that you can sort the data? Because I dropped a sort the data on HQ tonight.
I have said the phrase "sort the data" on CBS Sports Network, and Wally Zerbiak looked at me like I was from another planet.
Wally Zerbiak. Hey, great to see Wally.
If I texted Wally,
right, no data.
If I texted Wally right now, and I'd be like, "Have you sorted the data on Florida Atlantic lately at barttorvik.com?" His head would explode.
Not as bringing up that beautiful CBS Sports bracket. I love to see it. Anyway, the point is Gonzaga has played as the best team in the country over the past 5 weeks at Torvik, if you sort the data. So that could be waiting on the bottom half. TCU is also really, really good. Kansas got to get through a whole bunch of that. It's got the toughest road. So, yeah, that's the answer. Nada, what's our percentage? Who's leading the poll?
Purdue by 55%. Yeah, 55%.
And this is with 4 options of all 4 1-seeds. Purdue, 55%.
55%.
Yeah, I disagree, obviously, because I believe it's Kansas, but I can make the case that it's Purdue. That second round game could be against Memphis or FAU. Like that's tough. You get past that. I mean, how many teams are playing better than Duke right now? That might be who you run into in the Sweet 16. And then you got in the bottom of your region, the Big East champs or Kansas State could come out of that. So I could see it. I understand why people would pick Purdue, but I would rank them in terms of least likely to make the Final Four based on the possible pass to Houston. I would make those Kansas, Purdue, then Houston, and then Alabama, meaning the Crimson Tide are my most likely to get there. I think Alabama, as the number 1 overall seed, perhaps deservingly so, in fact, definitely deservingly so, has what appears to be the least complicated region, but appearances are often misleading.
Wait until you see what my bracket is.
Oh, and by the way,
it's a joke.
Based on the
what am I doing?
Based on the KenPom numbers alone, if UConn and Kansas play in the Sweet 16, the number 1 seed Jayhawks would be an underdog in that game.
Absolutely. Yes.
Right. Based on the KenPom numbers.
Yep. And then that would dictate, barring injuries or some, late breaking developments.
And we should also mention big headline from Sunday. Bill Self was released from the hospital. Oh, by the way, he's Kansas's coach. Wasn't available in the Big 12 tournament. Kansas did confirm that he had 2 stents placed to clear blockage in arteries. I'm not a heart surgeon. I'm not a heart surgein. Do I look like a heart surgeon? I kind of do look like a heart surgeon, I think.
If you walk into the OR, oh boy, get me.
Would you let me touch your heart?
No. You've touched my heart.
Wouldn't it be such a scary thing to have to know you're about to? Isn't that crazy that people choose that as a profession? I don't want to be
no, it's,
like,
it's
what is the
very
worst thing I
admirable,
can
and
do?
I'm very thankful for the people that get into the medical profession.
Like, what's the worst thing I could do?
They literally change the world.
Like mispronounce Adama Sanogo on television? Like, what is? Nobody's dying if I mispronounce Tyler Kolek, you know. But if you mess up as a heart surgeon, you could. Woo! What a
Bill
wild
Self is going to
profession.
coach in the NCAA tournament. That's really, really good news.
They're planning on Bill
but the
Self
most
to
important
coach
news
in
is
the
that he is
NCAA
okay.
tournament.
And then, yes, this was the word going around on Friday that he had 2 stents put in. Kansas decided to disclose that information, and we wish him nothing but the best. This is, as long as the doctors are saying he's good, because coaching the NCAA tournament, hard on the cardiovascular system, like very intense, high stress environments there. But provided he's good, happy to see Self back in the game.
Yeah. I hope he is coaching in KU's first round game, but he was just released from the hospital on Sunday. Is he going to be at his best when Kansas takes the court, like ready to coach and also ready to prepare to coach in that game? I hope so, but we'll see. Let me ask you this. Okay. What team seeding surprised you most? Is there any that stand out where you went, oh man, that team's 2 seed lines better, 3 seed lines better than what the committee gave them?
You already know what I'm going to say. What am I going to say?
Texas A&M.
No, I got no issue with Texas A&M.
Oh, I do.
Okay. You know what? I'll wait on mine. Here's why my Texas A&M thing is this, because we disagree fundamentally on this and philosophically, and that's fine. And it's good. It's healthy disagreement. Don't want to just yes each other up and down for 60 minutes on a podcast. What kind of fun is that? I said this over the air tonight. I have no issue. In fact, I like the fact that there is an unofficial arbiter when it comes to non-conference scheduling in college basketball. I've said this before. I say this almost every Selection Sunday show, so I'll try and keep this short because I don't want to repeat myself. College coaches will only be forced to change by things like this. Buzz Williams had a terrible non-conference schedule, okay? He could have done better. He chose not to. And so Texas A&M proved it in league play. But, and I don't think this was done like intently maliciously. They just looked at the data and they're going to say, sorry, if you do this, just like Rutgers, sorry, if you don't have a good non-conference, then you're going to get hit. Another team that I'm going to talk about is hit just the same, but for different reasons. So that's why I have no issue with A&M. A&M's bigger problem is the fact that it got the hottest 10 seed that it could possibly face. And so in doing so, the problem is if you could have gotten it a 6 or maybe even 8, like if I'm A&M, give me Iowa, give me Auburn, give me Maryland, give me West Virginia. Don't give me Memphis or FAU. Give me Arkansas or Illinois before you give me Penn State, man. That's a tough matchup for them, but I got no issue with it. What's your gripe?
Well, as I've said many times, and I do like to repeat myself. I don't know if you've noticed. I hate non-conference strength of schedule. It is so ridiculous that is a part of the criteria, because all teams should not be scheduling non-league the same way. Gonzaga, as a perennial top 10 team, national brand that plays in the West Coast Conference, should be scheduling wildly aggressively in the non-league portion of its schedule, because you're not going to be able to get those games in your league too often. Whereas if you are, say, a middle of the pack SEC team, like Texas A&M was, Texas A&M was slightly better than middle of the pack, but definitely middle of the pack preseason expectations with SEC. You should not be scheduling aggressively, and then you're gonna have one massive challenging game after another once your league starts. You shouldn't be challenging yourself in the non-league the same way. Again, somebody like Gonzaga or Houston or Memphis, teams that are national brands that can schedule big time games, and they happen to play in not so great conferences. So I hate that that's even a part of the process, but I recognize that it is. Take it, set it over there. Texas A&M finished second in the SEC, finished second in the SEC tournament. And the only reason, or at least the main reason, they are only a 7 seed is because they did start 6-5 with losses to Wofford and Murray State. It's not just their non-league strength of schedule. It's that they were terrible against that schedule. 2 losses to sub 200 net teams, Wofford and Murray State. The Wofford loss was on December 20th. So if you You ready for this? Sort the data at barttorvik.com from December 21st. That's nearly 3 months ago. Do you realize that Texas A&M, nearly 3 months ago, Texas A&M is the 8th best team in the country, according to barttorvik.com. The 8th best team in the country.
The resume takes in the whole season, my friend.
I understand that. I get it. But at some point, you have to pay attention to it. Here's the thing. Just be consistent with how you do these things, because I'm about to explain to you how they're inconsistent. They look at your entire body of work, and they'll say, yeah, Texas A&M over the past 2.5 months has been a top 10 team in the country, finished second in a power conference behind the number one overall seed. Oh, by the way, just beat the number 1 overall seed a week ago, and then played them in the championship game of the conference tournament again. But some stuff that happened 3 months ago is the reason we can't give them the seed. They so clearly, their abilities suggest, their results suggest, recent results, 2.5 months of results suggest they deserve. So they won't look at what you are right now. They'll tie in what you used to be. But let UCLA's second leading scorer get hurt. And they don't just say, well, now they're looking at what you are right now. Isn't that a difference in approaches? With Texas A&M, they're not looking at what they are right now. They're looking at, in part, what they were in November and December.
Yeah.
But when you start looking at a UCLA or a Tennessee or any team that has lost a big-time player in recent weeks, then they look at what you are right now, and they will seed you accordingly. With Rutgers,
that's fair, though.
With Rutgers, They said that part of the reason Rutgers didn't get the benefit of the doubt, didn't make the tournament, is because they lost a player 10 games ago. They're not the same team without him. So they're right there. They're not focusing on the entire body of work. They are, by their own admission, at least in part, focusing on what Rutgers is without that player. But when it comes to Texas A&M, it's like, well, you got to look at the whole picture. And I won't even argue passionately either way. Let's either look at the entire picture, or let's not look at the entire picture. And when it comes to these ways of doing things, they are inconsistent approaches.
They need to look at the entire picture. You got to make sure that a game played on November 10th means the same as a game played on March 10th. I believe that is how you. First of all, it's just better for college basketball to try and get as many good games as possible in November and December. And so, yeah, this is a function of part of that. And I will always be a believer in not having recency bias and trying to. And I think recency bias will creep in a little bit because it's hard not to with human nature and when teams are playing hot. And some of that corresponds. Penn State was able to boost up its seed because it just added to its resume and has played well and damn near pulled the rabbit out of the hat in the Big Ten title game. That being said, I don't have an issue with taking into consideration how teams are playing when they don't have a key player. The way that college basketball. Go ahead.
Let me ask you this real quick because Ken Pomeroy, to give credit where credit's due, brought this up on Twitter a few weeks ago.
He's wrong. That's okay.
And I thought it was a smart point that I had never properly made.
He's wrong though. He's wrong. Ken's wrong, right about almost everything. He's wrong about this. Yes, go ahead.
His point is, if we're talking about the same point, that just because you lose a player doesn't mean that you should be seated any differently than you would have been if that player was available. Largely because it is not the way we do it anywhere else. For instance, right now, the Denver Nuggets in the NBA are projected to be the 1 seed in the West because they have the best record in the West. And if Nikola Jokic tears his ACL tomorrow, Denver will still be the 1 seed in the West. They won't say, well, you don't have your best player anymore, so we can't let you. It's like, you have the best record. You are the 1 seed. And we do that literally in every
That's
other
not how it works in
sport.
college basketball, though. We have 363 teams that play at all different levels with all different resources that don't play the same kind of schedules, and the schedule in the NBA is much more similar. It's much the data points that connect those teams and the way that they build out their postseasons. It's not the same exact thing. It is very much apples and oranges. And so, if you want to say that if you want to say the selection committee should not take that into account, that's fine. You're entitled to that opinion. But what they are doing is, if teams lose players and are trying to evaluate what the selection committee is doing, is it's taking an entire body of work, it's evaluating what you've done and slotting you into the bracket and trying to reward you for what you have done, but acknowledging the state of your team. I have zero issue with the fact that if a team has proven to be less effective after an injury, if it gets docked like that, because the results literally show that. It's not the same thing as the NFL. It's not the same thing as the NBA. It's not even the same thing as the conference tournaments. You're literally requiring a selection committee. None of these other sports use selection committees. The postseasons are built out by record. Some could say they're even done unfairly. Some would say go to the soccer model, go to relegation and promotion, go to the table, go to that system, because that's even better than what we do in the NBA. So I don't have an issue whatsoever with taking that into account and being a talking point. In fact, I sometimes think that gets slightly overstated. I don't have an issue with it, and it has proven out even in the past with the major ones, the Hummel, the Kenyon Martin. It doesn't happen all that often, but Rutgers, the committee chair, told me, he said Mawot Mag, he didn't name him specifically, but Mawot Mag's injury, they were worse after it, and so we docked him for it, and they didn't get in on top of what they had not done on their schedule. I don't have a problem with it.
I don't think it's, respectfully, I don't think it's apples and oranges. What they're doing is they're saying, in the rare instances,
apples and oranges. There's no other. Only college football puts teams into a bracket by humans deciding it. The NBA doesn't do that. Pro football doesn't do that. Hockey doesn't do it. Basically, they don't do it that way.
I recognize that in the NFL we go by records, and in the NBA we go by records, Major League Baseball records, and in college football and college basketball we go by resumes. That's apples and oranges. This isn't. What a selection committee can do, whether it's in football or men's basketball or women's basketball, is say, based on your accomplishments, you should be this. But because you're missing a player, we're not going to make you that. And that is not something that would ever be done in NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball. Obviously, hey, watch this. You ready? Nikola Jokic tears his ACL tomorrow. The Nuggets go 2 and whatever the rest of the way. Nobody is going to say, well, the Nuggets can't be the 1 seed because they're clearly not the best team in the West anymore, not even close. It's just like, we are going to seed you based on what you earned, regardless of who was available when or now. And in college basketball, they don't want to do that. And here's the point, my initial point that I'm trying to make. I don't care how you do it, but just be consistent with it. Don't tell me you don't care that Texas A&M has for 2.5 months been playing like a top 10 team in the country because of some stuff that happened 3 months ago. Don't tell me you don't care what Texas A&M is right now, but you're literally leaving Rutgers out of the tournament in part because of what Rutgers is right now. Those two statements are inconsistent approaches.
But A&M didn't lose a player to injury. They're two different things. See what I'm saying? Like A&M's had his full roster available. So they're two different scenarios. And I think that this gets overstated. UCLA is right where it should be, even without Jalen Clark. Jerry Palm put UCLA on the 3 line, thinking that the committee would dock UCLA for not having Jalen Clark. That's not what happened. UCLA stayed the 2, doesn't have Jalen. They didn't get punished for it. So usually, if anything, and I've talked to committee members about this in the past, this particular talking point in years past on different committees, and every committee is different, it can almost be like, all right, are the margins so thin that we need to break the tie, and one team clearly doesn't have an impactful player, the other one does? Well, if that's the case, then objectively speaking, we should, if we're going to use that to break the tie, so to speak, we'll do that. I just don't have a problem with it, and I don't think it is even that. I just don't think it carries that much significance. And in the instances where it does become a factor, I simply don't have a problem with it, because you're talking about a team dropping maybe 1 seed line. I just don't know how much that matters.
All right, let's move back to the initial point. Any other teams you thought got screwed from a seeding? Because I threw out Texas A&M. You're not as bothered by it. What's your team?
Florida Atlantic. What are we doing here? This is a joke.
Well, I agree with you here. Finally we can get something we agree on here.
Let's go. FAU has been rated top 25 level in resume-based metrics for a while now, and even as we speak now, 22 in strength of record, 27 in KPI. It's 13th in the net. Predictives, Ken Palm 26 overall. Sagarin's low on him, but went 2-1 in quad 1. It went 4-2 in quad 2, and I asked Chris Reynolds why it was a 9. And he said they didn't prove it enough in non-conference, didn't have the opportunities. And I said, well, that they don't have those. You're the AD at Bradley. They don't have the opportunities. Dusty May has had a good team in CUSA every year he's got there. Okay, so what happens in this situation, as you well know, is that once you have a good mid-major program, then nobody is taking your calls, or very few people are taking your calls. I talked to Mike Rhodes on Saturday when VCU had won the semi and hadn't won the final. He gave me, and I won't out the schools, he gave me some coaches who tell me they're not afraid to schedule people, would not play VCU on a neutral. And frankly, VCU, go play them on the road. I get that. But the point is, don't dock it against the team if it's out of their control. This is where I think we're going to agree 100%. When it is out of the control of these mid-major programs, and then you're going to say, we just don't see enough in the quad 1 column. We don't see enough in the quad 1, quad 2. I assure you, they are working the phones every day for weeks and months at a time. You will never convince. Memphis is a kick-ass team right now. Memphis can beat FAU. Memphis might beat FAU. You will never convince me that FAU is not, at the absolute worst, a 7 seed. I would have put them on the 6th line. I didn't think it was going to happen. I actually had some misplaced optimism that the committee would smarten up and put them that high. It didn't happen. And I also hate the fact, I love the game, but I hate the fact that Memphis and FAU are playing each other, man. Why not give us Iowa, Memphis, and Auburn FAU? Give us something like that.
I'll tell you the conspiracy.
I love the game, but I hate they're playing each other. I wish they were playing different teams because both teams are good enough to win at least one with the way that they're playing right now.
The conspiracy has for a while been, and I actually don't subscribe to this. I don't think I do. I think it's just, if you put a bracket together, you're going to get some matchups like this, and they're going to pop off the page, and then people will start asking questions. But you try to, okay, well, let's do another bracket, and you'd find another one of these somewhere. But the conspiracy, what non-Power 5 coaches will tell you, is that they try to put two good ones against each other from the non-Power 5s to make sure one of them gets put out quick. I don't necessarily subscribe.
We got that St. Mary's VCU 5-12 as well, but there's a lot of non-powers in the 12 line this year, so that doesn't really hold too much more.
Right. But I'm with you on Florida Atlantic. I had them as a 6 seed. I've got them, in the top 24 of the top 25 and 1, which equates to a 6 seed. They're 31-3, outright Conference USA champs, Conference USA tournament champs. And I know that league isn't great, but there's 3 top 65 KenPom teams in that league. It's not like they're just way better than everybody else, or there's nobody comparable to them. UAB is good. North Texas is good. And Florida Atlantic just went 31-3. They're 13th in the net. That translates to a 4 seed. 26th at KenPom. That translates to a 7 seed. And I know they only have 2 quadrant 1 wins, but they went 2-1 in quadrant 1. They're above 500 in quadrant 1, and they're 3 games above 500 in the first 2 quadrants. They have 0 losses outside of the first 2 quadrants. Like, I just went and picked a random 8 seed. Iowa. Iowa's 4-7 in quadrant 1. So instead of being 1 game above 500 in quadrant 1 like Florida Atlantic, they're actually 3 games below 500 in quadrant 1.
There's no argument that Iowa has a better resume or is a better team than FAU. It does not exist.
I don't think so either. Iowa is 13-10 in the first 2 quadrants with 2 quadrant 3 losses. So Florida Atlantic and Iowa are both 3 games above 500 in the first 2 quadrants. The main difference is FAU has 0 losses outside of the first 2 quadrants, and Iowa has 2 quadrant 3 losses. Florida Atlantic is also ahead of Iowa in most computers, but Iowa got the better seed. That's wrong. Again, the margins are slim, but it's wrong. Florida Atlantic should have a better seed than Iowa, and Florida Atlantic should have a better seed than Florida Atlantic actually has.
It's a joke. They whiffed it, and I knew they were going to whiff it, man. I was hoping I'd be wrong. Because I'll tell you what, I look across this bracket, and if you can bring up the bracket again for anyone watching to follow in real time here, I don't think so. I get the A&M case. I'm fine with A&M on the 7 line, but I get the case. FAU I've got the problem with. And I look at everywhere else, man, I got to say, like Xavier on the 3 line, I got no issue with that. I talked with Sean after they lost. He thought they were getting a 4. So that's like mildly surprising, but I don't have an issue, I don't think, with a single other team and the seed line it's on. And as we step back and look at this field, I think one of the more interesting things about it to me was the fact that water just tends to find its level when we talk about these seeds, and the committee does a good job. And I think the committee, for the most part, gets better and better at this each year. I think 10, 12 years ago, while they were doing an admirable job, and they were doing a good job in many ways, I just think there were members on that committee that were in over their depth. And it's to serve on the men's basketball selection committee is like a career highlight for anyone that gets into the college administration, AD and athletic director level. Like, everyone wants to be on this committee. And I think sometimes people get on it and it takes them a couple of years to really get a feel for what they're doing and what they're evaluating. So I'm saying that to say the committee has gotten better. And when I look at a bracket like this, when I see how it's seeded, and there's only I think there's 2 slip-ups, man. There's nothing like Missouri. Yeah, that's a 7. Creighton, it's a good team, but you take the resume. That's a 6. Iowa State, same deal. That's a 6. Miami deserves the 5. Maybe there's a little bit of noise about Duke on the 5 line. Personally, I think that's bang on. I got no issue with that. And for the most part, I think there's pretty good balance there. I think we talked about this a year ago too. Committee did a good job. I can't find another instance where I think that there was a miss by even 1 seed line. What about you?
Yeah, well, not in seeding. Like, I don't like Texas A&M seed. I don't like Florida Atlantic seed, but whatever. There is something that is technically okay, but I just think in the spirit of what we're supposed to be doing here, is out of bounds. And that is making Auburn a 9 seed, putting Auburn in Birmingham.
Yes.
And now Houston might have to play Auburn in Birmingham, Alabama. The 1 seed could be playing a de facto road game in the round of 32. That should not happen.
I agree. I had Reynolds for about, I want to say 6 minutes. I can't remember how long the interview was, but he does a bunch of these, and my appreciation to everyone at the NCAA for making them available, because he does CBS, he does CBS Sports Network, he does HQ, he does the AP, he does Westwood One Radio. They utilize it and they do a great job. They get it at the NCAA when it comes to this, but at a tight window. If you had, because in my mind, if I had, and I didn't have time, my one last question was, can you take me into the process and the fact-checking process and the vetting process where you're allowing 9th seeded Auburn to get that game there? And although it's about equidistant, you're giving Iona a trip up the Taconic Parkway to play in Albany against 4 seed UConn. Now, UConn's going to draw fans. Don't get me wrong. And if anyone's watching in the chat, actually inform us. I don't have the actually, I think I do in my bag, the bracket with all the regions. I'll take a look. I think that's the only 2 times. And we get that, if not every year, just about every year, where there's a lower seeded team. And maybe there's something to this where, like, it's going to spit out these different matchups and they're trying to build it. And maybe, all right, if we account for this, then suddenly we've got a bracketing principle thing. Like, there is that. In many ways, the bracket gets squeezed into only a few different variations you can do from a bracketing principle standpoint, a logistical standpoint. So I understand if maybe you take Auburn out of there and you move them somewhere else and you put someone else in there, then suddenly you're dealing with this issue, and that causes this issue. It feels like that should be avoided. I agree with you, GP. You can't have a 1 seed playing a potential second round game, a stone's throw, a 4-iron away from a 9 seed. That's it. Auburn's got to get there, and I don't think it will. I'll take Iowa to win that game, but you'd want to avoid that if you can. You got a 13 seed. I think Iona might be closer to Albany than Storrs. So, and I love that I'm going to get that game in person. That's awesome. But if you can avoid that, I would agree. Minor nitpicks, but nitpicks nonetheless.
Favorite first round matchups? Any you got circled already? I'll run you through some of the ones that jumped off the page to me, then you take it wherever you want. In the East region, we've talked about it. Number 8, Memphis against number 9, Florida Atlantic. Number 6, Kentucky against number 11, Providence. Bryce Hopkins against his former school. That's terrific. Number 5, Duke against number 12, Oral Roberts. That's Max Asmus against the Blue Devils. Should be terrific. In the West region, number 4, UConn versus number 13, Iona. Awesome. Dan Hurley, Rick Pitino. Yeah. Number 8, Arkansas. Number 9, Illinois. That's 2 big brands. Should I pick Illinois just to ruin Tom Fornelli's week?
You got to. That's actually. I just realized. Don't you have to take A&M to the Sweet 16? You got A&M over Texas. I believe that's the deal, is it not?
Well, how about this? I didn't even remember that. I didn't even remember saying that. I have
at least
and we'll get
game.
to this.
I think you said Sweet
I have
16.
Texas A&M in the Elite 8.
Okay.
I have Texas A&M in the Elite 8.
Love it.
In the South region,
yeah.
Hey, I'll put my bracket where my mouth is. You know,
Oh.
I'm not going to sit here and talk for 7 minutes about how they underseeded Texas A&M and then not take the Aggies all the way to the Elite Eight. So I got them in the Elite Eight. In the South region, first round matchups that are interesting: number 5 San Diego State versus number 12 Charleston, number 6 Creighton versus number 11 NC State. And then in the Midwest region, number 5 Miami versus number 12 Drake. Somebody tweeted me a picture of Drake standing in a Miami sweatshirt. So that's interesting. Number 4 Indiana versus number 13 Kent State. That's in the Midwest. And number 7 Texas A&M versus number 10 Penn State in the Midwest. 2 teams that have been playing well down the stretch. So those are some first round matchups that sort of jumped off the page to me. Either they're really compelling games or they've got nice storylines attached to them.
Yeah, I'll give you a few of my favorites. San Diego State, Charleston, man. Just contrasting styles. Charleston's going to be a very trendy. There's going to be a few.
Is that the game? Is that the game with the 2 schools furthest away from each other?
Ooh, that's got to be it. Yeah, that's got to be it. Hold on one second. Let me get a different bracket. Hold on. I'm getting the bracket with the regions. All right, I'm here. Switching out my bracket so I can look at where these games are getting played. All right, so San Diego State, Charleston. That's Orlando. Man, see, and you got the 5. Now you got the 5. You don't get the geographic preference. You're flying across the country there. Charleston, I guess it's drivable. I think Virginia Furman is Furman. That is a sneaky upset potential there. Sticking in the South right now.
What if Furman's mascot was just a really hairy man?
Furman.
They were the Furman's Furman. The Furman Furmans.
It's a paladin though. You know what
I know, but they should be the Furmans, the Furman Furmans, and it'd just be a guy with a hairy back.
Yeah. All right.
Why do I have to come up with all the good ideas?
That's what they're saying. Those are the 2 in the South. Those are my 2 favorite in the South. My 2 favorite in the East. Give me Memphis. Memphis FAU is my favorite game of the first round. That's going to go down in Columbus, and I hate that one of those teams is going to be out. That's a major bummer. That's a Friday game. And then my second favorite game in that region is Duke Oral Roberts. Come on, man. Are you kidding me? Max Asmus? Or are you the hottest team in the country going up against a Duke team that's found its stride, but it's drawn this 12 of all 12s? Tremendous stuff there. Shouts to Nada, by the way. He's tossing up some HQ graphics here on the YouTube channel. That's some good producing right there. Those are my 2 favorite in the East. Scoot over to the West, the right side of the bracket. My 2 favorite in the first round here, UConn Iona. Come on, man. Dan Hurley, Rick Pitino. Rick Pitino getting his Big East tune-up. These 2 are going to face each other next season. See where Rick lands, but it seems inevitable. Rick's going to the Big East. So I love that. I'll also get St. Mary's, VCU, and Albany. I'm getting that Miami Drake game as well. I'm getting it. Oh, dude, I lucked out. Albany, big-time site. St. Mary's, so Arkansas, Illinois, and UConn Iona are my 2 favorite in the West. Arkansas, Illinois, that is flip a coin and pick it. Don't overthink it. Seriously, do not overthink it. Musselman versus Underwood, they've lived a few lives this season, and that is my favorite, second favorite 8-9 game to FAU Memphis. Just a wonderful, wonderful matchup there. And then in the Midwest, my 2 favorites are, I would say that Miami Drake game. I don't have the guts to take Drake. Shame on me. I got to go Miami, but that's wonderful. I'll be getting that in Albany. Looking forward to it. And then, yeah, I'll stick with it, man. I got to say Indiana, Kent State. Rob Senderoff, former Indiana assistant who fell on the sword for Kelvin Sampson, faced NCAA sanctions, easy for me to say. And he has been just rolling for a decade plus at Kent State. And they get in. That is boy. Feels like it might be an upset. Feels like your boy might have that upset in his bracket. So 2 per region. My 3 favorites overall in order. Memphis FAU. UConn Iona is not really top 3. I love the storyline. I'd say generally I would say Memphis FAU 1, San Diego State, Charleston 2, Indiana, Kent State are my 3 favorite first round matchups.
I was sitting in my hotel room last night getting some work done, and watching games, and you tweeted that you had texted with Rob Cinderoff before the game and asked for his playlist, pregame playlist. And he said he went,
yeah. He's a huge Pearl
he went
Jam fan,
Pearl-
so I knew he'd be listening. And I was wondering genuinely, was he going live show? Was he going studio album? And he tossed to me. He's like, I went a little binaural, no code, and then binaural if I got the time to do it. And he was dialed in. So I appreciate that. Sorry to interrupt you, but I want to give it
no. So I was like, I don't know. This is the way my mind works. You probably notice if you listen to the podcast, like something pops into my head and then I stick with it. And so I was like, man, I haven't listened to No Code in probably 20 years. Cause just like everybody my age was a Pearl Jam fan once upon a time, perhaps still is. But like, if you were growing up in the 90s or in high school in the 90s, it was impossible not to be into Pearl Jam. Like were they the biggest band in the world at the time?
In some ways, yes, and then they refused to work with Ticketmaster, and then they fell off the map, but their popularity dipped with a quickness there. But it went like, yes, they were among the most popular bands, and they
probably
were
three
for
probably 3 or 4 albums. They were but
arguably people that love
biggest
Nirvana
band in the
also
world.
prided themselves on hating Pearl Jam, so there was that kind of fan out there as well. So
there was a moment where and they are one of the few bands from that era that can still sell out arenas. Like today, they can still sell out arenas. Like when we were teenagers, like the Stones could still sell out football stadiums, and Robert Plant and Jimmy Page could still sell out an arena. But typically you're a big rock band, then you at the height of it, you're in arenas, and then who knows where you might be at casinos by the time it's over. Pearl Jam still today can sell at arenas. Anyway, so I go and I put on No Code, and it was wild. It's like I still knew every word to every song. I haven't heard it in 20 years. I knew every word to every song. And then here was my favorite part. So after it's over, I listen to Apple Music, and after it's over, the album's over, it just automatically starts playing similar things. So the next 3 songs that came on, I hadn't heard these songs in years. Tomorrow by Silverchair.
Yeah, baby.
Outshined by Soundgarden.
Oh boy, that's a good one. What's our last one?
Dead and Bloated by Stone Temple Pilots.
I am feeling like a roll. Yeah, that's good stuff right
That
there.
somebody
STP.
gave me birthday deathbed. Birthday deathbed. I think that's what he said.
I thought you were going to give me a little Candlebox. And now maybe. All right, let's talk Final Four picks here.
I'm taking Silverchair. I'm taking Silverchair.
But I did it anyway. Silverchair. Across the Night, underrated song. Go look it up. Some good stuff there. It's off their album.
Dude, on my
It's
radio
actually a
show,
little
back when I
underrated
used to have a
record.
radio show. Back when I used to have a radio show,
Back in the
we
day.
randomly, like Candlebox came up somehow. I don't even know how. And so I was like, I wonder what Candlebox has been up to lately. Like, who knows? And they just put out an album, like in
Yeah.
2022.
Still going at it.
So on my ride home that day, I
Playing
listened to
casinos.
it.
How was
Okay,
it?
this is what's so funny. So first time I listened to the new Candlebox album on my ride home that day, and I was like, well, that sounds exactly like what I figured
People are
Candlebox
so
sound
angry
like.
at you in the people are so angry at you in the chat for that STP. You went that was a little aggressive. Just saying.
I apologize. My condolences to your ears.
You're gonna have people are gonna be like running or walking their dog in their neighborhood, getting to this Selection Sunday show, and they're just gonna scream out of nowhere. Anyway, continue with your Candlebox.
My condolences to your ears. My inner Scott Weiland came out for a second.
Everyone is saying my ears are bleeding.
So I listened to this Candlebox album from 2022, and I'm like, yeah, this sounds about like what Candlebox should sound like in 2022. This kind of makes sense. So then I was like, are these guys touring? And so I went to their website, and it said like whatever the date, Coachella. And I was like, what?
Hell yeah.
Candlebox is playing Coachella in 2023.
What size is the font on the poster? Yeah, where are they?
Okay, no. It's even funnier. They're actually playing a casino in Coachella. But they were like, all it said on the site, I swear to God, it said like April 23rd, Coachella. And I'm like, wow, who am I just out on Candlebox. Didn't know that they're still big enough to play Coachella. And then you do the fine print. It's like the Silver Chair Casino in Coachella, California. Anyway, that's all I know about Candlebox.
Final four teams. Let's do it.
I'm taking Silver Chair to go to the Final Four.
Don't tempt
I've
me to
got my
make a
picks.
90s band bracket because I will do it in a heartbeat.
I've got my bracket right here. You want me to tell you?
Same.
I've got Alabama beating Creighton in the Elite Eight to go to the Final Four.
Let's go let's each give our region, okay? So you've got and that'll lead, and we're gonna, if you want our full pick, that's Wednesday's episode, our full bracket. They'll be up on the CBS Sports app before then, and we'll probably pick on these on region by region. But we're just gonna give you our Final Four and champion picks tonight. You have Bama over Creighton
in the Elite Eight, Alabama in the Final Four.
Okay, you know what I have? I got Creighton over Bama.
How about okay?
I picked Creighton to the final. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. It's been a wild season. I cannot bring myself to have nothing but 1s and 2s in the Final Four. So yeah, I got the Jays getting past Baylor, Zona, and Bama, which is an outrageous road. Why not? Give me them.
Okay, in the East Regional, I have Purdue over Kansas State in the Elite Eight. Purdue in the Final Four. I almost went with Duke based on the way they're playing now, but I went with Purdue, and I'm going to be completely transparent. It's me picking with my heart. I want Purdue to go to the Final Four. I want Matt Painter to be a quote-unquote Final Four coach. So I don't know how confident I am in that, although they are the outright Big Ten champs and the Big Ten tournament champs. But I want them to get there. So I'm trying to pencil it into existence.
Matt Painter, huge Candlebox fan.
I could see that.
This is my only region with a 1 versus a 2. I have Purdue over Marquette in the Elite Eight in the East. If that happens, I'll be at that regional final, that regional semifinal. That's going to be in New York City at Madison Square Garden. So this is Marquette getting back to the site where it just cut down the nets and won the Big East tournament on Saturday night. What about the West?
Well, damn it. Kevin B in the YouTube comments just made a good point.
He
said, if I want Purdue to go to the Final Four, literally the last thing I should do is pick Purdue to go to the Final Four.
It's done.
I should have had Purdue losing
what are you doing?
Memphis or something.
Yeah. Which, by the way,
this up.
On the table, man. It is on the table. I bet one of our HQ producers
with Kendrick
here. I bet
Davis
one of
and
our
DeAndre
HQ
Williams.
producers dinner 2 weeks ago. I said, there's no shot. Purdue's making the Sweet 16. And then like 5 days ago, I was like, the only way is if they get like a Memphis or someone. Now look at them. I'm done.
Dude, Memphis is tough with Kendrick Davis and DeAndre Williams. Like those two guys, I mean, those are super seniors, older guys, great college players. Like Memphis probably needs those guys to combine for 45, but they can combine for 45.
These picks
They've been
don't mean
doing
anything. It's Sunday night. No one's listening to this. It doesn't count.
Yeah, nobody cares. Nobody cares. All right. So now we are in the Midwest Regional. Is that where we're at?
Wherever you want to go, man.
Let's go Midwest. I have Houston over Texas A&M in the Elite Eight. Houston in the Final Four.
So you know what? I'm proud of you. You got a 6 and a 7 in the regional finals. I like that. I have Houston over Xavier, and like 27% of that is I love who doesn't love writing X on the bracket? You get the bracket, you print it out. Few better feelings, and everyone listening knows exactly what I'm talking about. Just write an X. Just write that X through a couple rounds.
My bracket it just has X's.
We go. X's. We love
same
the
as
X. Yep. I got Houston over X in the Midwest Regional Final. That'll be going down in Kansas City. Houston going to Houston.
And then in the West Regional, I have UConn over Gonzaga in the Elite Eight. I have the Huskies in the Final Four. I have Kansas losing to UConn in the Sweet 16.
Apparently, we got a huge number watching and listening right now on YouTube. Smash the like button like you're Brandon Davies. There are more of us than there are of them. I want to shout out the 4 or 5 people that found me at the Garden. A couple who were screaming and flagging me down, including the Xavier fan. You know who you are because you listen to the pod. Just screaming. There's more of us. We had a connection. I feel you. So please continue to support the channel.
I was walking to the studio today, And it's a nice walk down 57th, and I've got my AirPods in. I'm listening to music, and
you listen to Candlebox.
Listening to the SZA album. Have you listened to that album?
I have not.
It's
I will
great.
though. I mean, she's awesome, but I just haven't had the time yet. Yeah.
You should make time.
I will
she's
eventually
great.
make time, fellas.
So that's what I was listening to.
Drive up to Albany Friday. It's going down. All right. Yeah.
It's like legitimately a great album. So I was listening to that, and then I noticed some guy like trying to talk to me, which, as you know, in New York City, like strangers don't really talk to each other on the streets. Like that's something that might happen in the South, but it doesn't really happen in New York. So some guy's like clearly trying to talk to me, and I take the AirPods out, and he goes, did the Tar Heels get in? And I was like, we're still 2 hours away from that, but I doubt it. He was really concerned.
You clearly have not listened to the most recent podcast, if you're asking me.
Yeah, I was like, buddy, you got to get to. We killed North Carolina just 2 days ago, but yeah, like when people who listen to the pod or whatever take the time to say hello, just understand you're never bothering us. You're making us happy,
and we appreciate it.
Unless you are bothering us, and then we'll be quick with
it. Paris will bitch about it before we hit the record button, and we'll be all right. UConn Gonzaga in your West Regional Final. I also have UConn versus Gonzaga in the West Regional Final. Give me the Zags with that home court advantage out at T-Mobile in Vegas. So I have Gonzaga. So my Final Four is Creighton, Purdue, Houston, and Gonzaga. And you
and my
have
Alabama, Purdue, Houston, and UConn. And then let's go ahead and go all the way through with it. I've got Alabama and Houston playing in the national title game, and I have Houston winning the national championship.
I have Purdue playing Houston in the national championship game, and I will take the Houston Cougars with a healthy or mostly healthy Marcus Sasser, cutting down the nets, giving us one of the all-time storybook endings in sports. Houston becoming the first program since UCLA in 72, I believe, to win a national championship in its home city. Doing so after making a Final Four 2 years ago in the Elite Eight last year. Doing so as this humongous rebuild Kelvin Sampson has done is incredible. And, of course, doing so on friend of the podcast, Jim Nance's last call in an NCAA tournament game for his career. We both have the Cougs cutting down the nets. And I'm not shifting off that. And barring news dictating otherwise, I don't think I'm going to switch off any of my picks, but my Final Four, I'm sticking with the Creighton. Listen, I'm just going to take a few dart throws. Creighton, that's a long shot. So I've got 2 1s, a 3, and a 6. Final Four.
Something just occurred to me.
What do you got?
I am reasonably confident that this is the first ever podcast. Think of all the things we've done first with this podcast. First podcast ever to go to video. First podcast ever to go to television.
Yeah,
and now I think first podcast to ever within a 10-minute segment mention both Candlebox and Scissor. I bet you that's never happened before.
Silverchair. Yeah, and
Silverchair. I doubt Scissor and Silverchair have ever been in the same podcast.
You know who's a huge, no joke, he loves when you talk about this, huge Candlebox fan, Tom Fornelli. I said maybe. Oh boy, we're rolling on 4. No.
I want to do Scott Weiland one more time.
No.
I tell you what, back in the late 90s, I would have been at the Mud Island Amphitheater in downtown Memphis, and Scott Weiland walked out, and that's the first thing he did. That's a fun place to be back in the late 90s, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You should have been there.
We will preview the rest of these regions on Monday. You will get those episodes in the feed, and tons more to get to. Matchups to dive into, plot lines to follow. There's a lot of stuff here. What are the overrated, popular upset picks? The underrated ones? What are the ones hiding in plain sight nobody's talking about? Because we had one last year, St. Peter's over Kentucky. Nobody had that. And yeah, I know. You had it in your 7th bracket, or your mom had it, or whatever. You know what I mean? That was no one was talking about St. Peter's beating Kentucky. What's hanging out there right now? Is it Montana State over Kansas State? No one's talking about that. No one's talking about Grand Canyon beating Gonzaga. Could UNC Asheville knock off UCLA in the first round? Stuff like that. It's out there. We might get it, we might not, but that's the beauty of this thing. And I appreciate everyone that joined us live here because this is an amazing day. I mean, the thing I love about college basketball is you get 3 Christmases. You get Selection Sunday, which is one, and then the first Thursday, which is just an incredible feeling once you actually start the first round in earnest, and then you get to run it back again on the Friday of the first round. So it's awesome stuff, and we got more coming very, very soon. But I got to tell you what, it's after midnight. I'm on 4 hours of sleep. I still got to drive home. I think it's time to wrap this puppy up.
Yeah, drive carefully. Thanks everybody for being here. I know it's late, but the streaming numbers on YouTube seem to be really, really strong. So thank you guys for being here. We've got regional previews that we are going to be doing on Monday. We'll bring in a whole crew for that. Me and Norlander will be hosting different episodes. David Cobb's going to be with us. Kyle Boone's going to be with us. Chip Patterson's going to be with us. And then we will be at the end of every night of the NCAA tournament doing episodes that recap everything that's happened and everything that's coming up. And so we'll be here with you late Thursday night, late Friday night, late Saturday night, late Sunday night in some form. So this is the most fun time of the year for us. It's busy. It's overwhelming. We're not always going to be in ties and collared shirts, but we're not always going to be well rested.
You look like you're going to a wedding. I look like I just came back from a wedding. That's what we're at right now.
I wish there was a wedding to go to right now at this time of night. I wouldn't
mind.
mind going to a wedding right now. You know, I'm wide awake. Okay. I am wide awake. That's a problem.
Hey, it was great. It was great seeing you in New York City. We'll see each other again in person at the Final Four. But we do also appreciate everyone that reached out about the CBS Sports Network stuff. That was a lot of fun as well. GP will continue to do more CBS Sports Network stuff, and then CBS Sports HQ. I mean, I don't know what else to say. You are getting as much college basketball coverage as you want in podcast form, video form. We've got it for you. Shout them out, GP.
Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Huck. Shouts to Larnell. Shouts to Scott Weiland. Thank you guys once again for listening to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, including Apple and Spotify. 5 stars, nice review over at Apple. There's more of us than there are of them. That needs to be reflected in the comments section. So knock that out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. And we're going to talk to you again real soon. Till then, take care.